Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, AlbyMTG, and for today's video I have another deck tech for you guys. This is going to be a nice deck tech if you're looking to get into Magic the Gathering Online but don't want to spend a ton of money towards your first Magic the Gathering Online deck. This is a deck that's going to be a ton of fun for you to play there, and it'll be fairly cheap for you as well. You can see it's 15 tickets here, and honestly I'm kind of impressed at myself for coming up with this name. The deck name is Panharmonored. I don't know how anyone else has not had the idea yet to say Panharb and then follow it by mono and then some color. Panharmonored just comes off the tongue so nice. I'm actually like super proud of myself for coming up with this name. Much more proud of the name than I am with the deck. But the deck is still ridiculously sweet, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So without further ado, this is a 15-ticket budget M19 standard deck called Panharmonored. So the deck revolves around the card Panharmonicon. Panharmonicon being a 4-mana artifact that says if an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So the way that this deck is going to work is we're going to play a bunch of cards with enters the battlefield triggers, and because of Panharmonicon's text, it'll have the enters the battlefield triggers happening multiple times for us, which is super sweet. If it happens, if we have one Panharmonicon out, it'll happen twice. If we have two Panharmonicons out, it'll happen 3 times. But the way that this deck works, a lot of the cards that we're playing are just so strong that we can win the game without Panharmonicon. But if we have Panharmonicon in play, it's going to be extremely hard for our opponents to beat it. So to start off, we're going to go with the lower creatures on our curve. These are all of our 2-drops we're playing. We're looking at 4 copies of Viashino Pyromancer, 3 Earthshaker Kenra, and 4 Direfleet Daredevil. Viashino Pyromancer is a new card from M19 that works super nicely in this deck. If we have out a Panharmonicon when we cast the Pyromancer, we're getting a 2/1 body and dealing 4 to our opponent for just 2 mana, which is fantastic. Earthshaker Kenra, again, if we have a Panharmonicon out, that's 2 creatures with power 2 or less that can't block this turn. It also works nicely with the Eternalize. If we have out a Panharmonicon, then that's 2 creatures with power 4 or less that can't block this turn. And then Direfleet Daredevil, if we're in the early game, we get a 2/1 first striker. That's not the worst. If we're in the late game, we get a 2/1 first striker that can also let us cast a card from our opponent's graveyard. The card has to be an instant or sorcery, but there's a ton of decks playing good instants and sorceries out there, so we're always going to have a solid target for Direfleet Daredevil. And then, of course, if we have out multiple Panharmonicons, then the triggers just go insane, and we can start casting a bunch of cards from our opponent's graveyard. We do have to pay the mana for those cards, but they can be as if they were any color. So if we have a Vraska's Contempt in our opponent's graveyard, we can pay 4 red mana to cast our opponent's graveyarded Vraska's Contempt. So Direfleet Daredevil, super nice. If we think about it late in the game, if we have like 7 mana in play, or I guess, yeah, 7 mana in play, then we can go with a Panharmonicon out. We can go Direfleet Daredevil, cast our opponent's Vraska's Contempt, and cast our opponent's Fatal Push, which seems pretty strong to me in the late game for a Direfleet Daredevil. So a lot of potential, at least, for the Direfleet Daredevil, and I'm very excited that it's seeing play in this deck because it's really been just kind of a sideboard card a lot in Standard, but this card is super powerful, and I'm very happy to be playing 4 copies of it in this deck. Next up, we have 4 Goblin Chain Whirler and 2 Pia Nalar. Goblin Chain Whirler, of course, we're playing a mono-red deck, so Chain Whirler needs to be in here. If we have a Panharmonicon, we're doing 2 damage to our opponent and 2 damage to each of all their creatures. If we have multiple Panharmonicons, of course, the Chain Whirler triggers just get out of control, but this is just adding additional value onto Chain Whirler, which is already just a fantastic card. And then Pia Nalar, kind of an underwhelming enters the battlefield ability, making ourselves a Thopter, but it's still just a fine card. It can make 2 bodies for 1 card, which can be great if we're kind of behind. This gives us 2 jump blockers, gives us a creature with flying, so if the ground is kind of clogged up, it gives us a flyer to start attacking with, and then Pia can even pump that flyer to do some additional damage as well. Next, we're on to kind of the higher end of the mana curve. Those were all of our things below Panharmonicon. These are all of our creatures above Panharmonicon mana. So we have 2 copies of Siegegang Commander, 3 copies of Demanding Dragon, and 2 copies of Combustible Gearhulk. With a Panharmonicon in play, Siegegang Commander then creates 6 1/1 tokens for us along with a 2/2 body. So that's 8 power and 8 toughness with an ability on the Siegegang Commander for just 5 mana. Demanding Dragon is much better in this deck than Glorybringer. They're already fairly comparable cards, but because of the ETB trigger that Demanding Dragon has, it makes it much better with our Panharmonicon. And then Combustible Gearhulk, of course, another enters the battlefield trigger that seems fairly solid in this deck, because if we're playing a Panharmonicon deck and we also have these 5 drops and 6 drops in our decks, our opponent's going to be taking quite a big risk if they choose to just put the cards in our graveyard. If they don't choose to put the cards in our graveyard, we get to draw 3 cards. If we have a Panharmonicon in play, then we're probably drawing 6 cards, which seems super, super good to me. 6 mana for 6 cards and a 6/6 first striking body sounds fantastic. So these are all of our creatures, and I think you guys can see now how we can win the game even without Panharmonicon, but if we have a Panharmonicon in play, then things just get out of control with this deck. So like I said, those are all of our creatures, and we'll move on to some of the support spells now. In terms of 1-drops, there are no 1-drops that really had good enters the battlefield abilities for red, and so I chose to just kind of lean back and be more reactive on turn 1. So we have 4 Shocks and 1 Magma Spray to deal with our opponent's turn 1 plays. If we're on the draw, then dealing with our opponent's turn 2 plays. There we go, that's how English works. We can go ahead and do that then as well. So we're kind of more reactive on turn 1 than proactive, but then for the rest of the game after that, we're a very proactive deck. And then we have 2 copies of a Braid and 1 copy of Banefire here to round things out for the 60 cards in the main deck. The Braid just very nice little modal spell here. Can do 3 damage to a creature if we need removal, or just destroy an artifact if they have a pesky artifact. And then Banefire, I think I talked about this in several videos already. This card is very nice against the control matchups because of the fact that it's uncounterable. We can use this to kill Teferi, kill Karn, kill Lyra, all these other just like good solid threats from the control decks, and then even if we're not against a control deck, we just have like a lightning, or not a lightning bolt, a fireball in the terms of Banefire. So not a bad card at all for our main deck, and we're only running 1. We're not super big onto the Banefires, but in the main board, having 1 seems perfectly fine. So that was the main board, as well as these 24 mountains, a nice simple mana base, and that takes us then onto the sideboard. Again, as I say in all of my deck techs, sideboards are very subjective and based upon the meta that you're planning on playing in, but because I'm doing this as a 15 tickets budget deck, I kind of looked at the Magic the Gathering Online meta as where I was making this sideboard from. So that's like the main place where my sideboarding comes from in these deck techs, but of course if you're planning on making this deck in paper, then adjust to your meta accordingly. So the first cards we have here are 1 copy of Hazoret the Fervent, 4 copies of Fanatical Firebrand, and 1 Demanding Dragon. The Hazoret and the Fanatical Firebrands allow us to go a more aggressive route, similar to how the previous mono-red decks that most people would expect us to be playing would be. I really wanted Fanatical Firebrand to be Bomat Courier, but it turns out a playset of Bomat Courier is essentially the same price as this entire deck on Magic the Gathering Online, so we cut out the Bomat Couriers, and instead we're just running Fanatical Firebrand as sort of a replacement there. And then Hazoret the Fervent actually is only like 2 tickets on Magic the Gathering Online, so it allows us to 1-run here in the sideboard, and if we choose to be a more aggressive red deck, then we can go ahead and sideboard in appropriately, especially against the blue-white control decks. We're going to want to be very aggressive. And then Demanding Dragon, this makes the 4th copy here. We had 3 in the main board. This is 1 more in the sideboard. Again, we bring these in against the matchups where the flyers are really powerful, more of like the mid-range grindy matchups. After that, we have 2 more copies of Banefire, again for the blue-white control matchup, 3 copies of Sentinel Totem as good graveyard hate, and then 2 copies of Sky Sovereign console flagship. Notably, Panharmonicon says artifact or creature, so if we play a Sentinel Totem with Panharmonicon in play, then we're getting to scry 1 twice, and if we play a Sky Sovereign with Panharmonicon in play, then we're getting to do 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker twice. So it's just a little bit of synergy there, nothing too crazy, but just something to be notable if you plan on playing the deck. And then finally, our last 2 sideboard cards here are 1 copy of Byforce for the crazy paradoxical outcome deck, the deck that plays a ton of artifacts, or just maybe like if a vehicles deck is starting to show up again, then Byforce would be a reasonable card there. And then Insult to Injury, I'm not really sure where this card is supposed to come in yet, but it is the kind of card that can just end games very easily. So if you want to give that a try, I kind of liked it in this deck. I'm not sure if you guys will like it as well, but we only really need 1 copy because 1 should be more than enough to just finish off the game in the matchups where you want it. So This has been Panharmonored. You guys can see the prices here, $96.68 in paper, and then 14 tickets online if you're planning on building it on Magic the Gathering Online. Again, I hope you guys did enjoy this deck tech, and of course, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Let me know your opinions on the deck down low in the comments section below. Let me know what cards you think should be in here, what cards you think should not be in here, all that other kind of stuff. I love hearing feedback from you guys, and I love talking about Magic with you guys. So again, thank you guys so much for watching the video. A like and a subscription would be appreciated if you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time for another Magic the Gathering video.